Well, let's focus in then on the latest report that's come out by BCG and Matrix talking about digitizing consumers in India. Joining me to discuss some of the key takeaways as well as the outlook is Siddharth Agarwal. He's Principal Matrix Partners India, as well as Parul Bajaj, Managing Director and Partner at BCG. Gentlemen, good to have you both on board. Thanks so much for joining in. Siddharth, going to begin with you because we've clearly seen that the pandemic has accelerated digital penetration over the last couple of years across sectors, and that's really boosted the adoption of e-commerce. What have been some of the key observations in the Indian consumer tech space which has seen large value creation?
Hi, thanks for having me here. As all of us know that the e-commerce penetration in our country, which used to be in the low single digits, has gone to 5 to 6% as a percentage of overall retail, which has been a significant increase in the overall user base. A few trends that we've seen play out is significant increase in the time spent on social media. More and more people across tier 2, tier 3 towns are increasingly are enabled with smartphone and internet. 630 million consumers on the whole are internet enabled. And we believe about 250 to 300 million people are part of the online consumers. There's been an acceleration in digital adoption. 40 plus unicorns have been created, creating more than $250 billion of valuation. On the whole, we see other trends that are playing out. We see that marketplaces are overtaking search engines as the new search sites. Omnichannel for multiple brands is becoming important. While they started out selling items online, increasingly they're exploring other channels like MBO, EBO in the offline space. There is all the enablers are already in place. We see quicker gratification as a preference with shorter delivery timelines. Multiple consumers have shifted towards healthier lifestyle choices. And we also see rise of generative AI and models like ONDC that are further going to boost the entire penetration in the future.
Oh, yes, indeed. That is fairly interesting. And, if I were to come to you, Parul, given the fact that we have seen, 40 plus unicorns as well in the consumer tech space, just walk us through which are the areas in which there is that rapid growth or that delta. Would it be gaming tech, mobility, BPC? What are some of the key, sectors that are really booming?
I think if we look at the different vectors of growth within consumer tech, we actually see three different vectors. There will be a set of new categories that will take off. The second is actually there are a set of new consumer cohorts which are coming into the fray. And the third is there are a set of new commerce models where we will also see value addition happening. In terms of new categories, I think you captured a couple of the examples, but we do believe that the next set of growth will come from beauty and personal care, food and FMCG, and then even potentially furniture and healthcare. If I look at new customer cohorts, and my colleague Sid already mentioned that we've seen a significant impact of pandemic in driving new shoppers online. Actually, what we've seen is that these new shoppers are different from the existing shoppers. They are older. So now 35 years plus of age is actually the largest share. It's almost 67% of the new shoppers that came online. We're seeing more women. We're seeing actually lower income consumers, and we're seeing almost 50% of the growth coming from tier 2 plus towns. So it's a substantial shift in even the type of consumer that is now shopping online. And then the third vector is, if you look at new commerce models, because there is a new consumer online, they actually have a different set of needs. They prefer it if they are able to interact with the seller, ask questions, and then make a purchase. They prefer it if they're able to see videos, if they have local influencers, if they are able to actually buy along with their friends and family in bulk and get a discount. And that's why we're actually seeing new commerce models also coming up in India, as well as, there are many examples in other geographies as well. We see assisted commerce, conversational commerce, group buying, live commerce, influencer and video commerce. And many of these models actually are all set to take off in India as well. So if I were to recap, three vectors of growth, there will be a set of new categories, new customer cohorts, as well as new commerce models that will really drive the next wave of growth in consumer tech in India.
Okay, and Siddharth, what's the outlook in terms of the growth in the consumer tech industry in India? You know, you've spoken about 4,000 plus deals in the report, as well as $54 billion worth of fund flows that we've seen over the last 5 years. Do you see this sustained growth over the next few years as well?
At Matrix, we take a very long-term view towards consumer tech investing. We are early investors in India from 2006, where we've backed 100 plus companies, right? A few of which have gone on to become unicorns like Ola, Dealshare, Razorpay, and the like. We believe that the overall GDP of the country is going to add another $3.5 trillion. And that is the amount of GDP that you've seen created in the first 75 years. Now, what happens when that GDP is getting created? The per capita income significantly goes up, adding to disposable income amongst the consumers. So we will see multiple categories seeing big unlocks, and the opportunity is up to potential founders out there who capture this and create large enterprises. So we believe this is India's decade, and we're just getting started.
India's decade that's just getting started. You know, just to take that question forward, or that point really forward, Parul, is to how you're looking at Indian consumer tech within the entire landscape of, you know, global consumer tech companies. Where exactly does India stand? Have we seen a massive catch up? Is there still a lot more ground to go?
Actually, if you look at it, India already has more than its fair share in terms of, you know, you look at any metric, you look at valuation, you look at deal flows, you look at number of deals, you look at unicorns. We already have more than our fair share of consumer tech action in our country. In fact, you know, if you compare some of the, you know, similar countries which have a very vibrant consumer tech landscape, which is, you know, you take US, you take China, you take Southeast Asia, India already is almost, you know, in top two, if not, you know, ahead of everyone else on many of these metrics. And I think you already talked about some of those, but 4,300 deals in the last 5 years, $54 billion of deal flows in the last 5 years, 43 plus unicorns, and $250 billion of valuation actually sitting in this sector in India. That's really the numbers that we're talking about here.
Okay. Siddharth, walk us through that other parameter, scaling 0 to 10 phase. What have been some of the key observations, and how are you looking at, you know, some of these companies really sustaining that kind of growth? What have been some of the key factors that you've observed?
It all starts with identifying an unmet need for the consumer. We've seen the large FMCG giants in the country who've gone on to create big brands. Now there's a new wave of entrepreneurs who realize that all the needs of the consumers were not being met. At least the products that were available earlier were sort of, they assumed that the entire audience was homogenous. So identifying different customer cohorts and their unmet needs, key understanding of what do the consumers need, I think it starts from there. Then you move on to making the right choices. You have to understand what value are you delivering to the consumer, at what price point, at what unit economics. And while doing all of this, you have to be very conscious about the consumer acquisition costs. And that kind of has ramifications across the channel choices that you take. Third is the differentiators on the supply side. So you have to think about whether it's vertically integrating with your own supply, locking in captive supply, and building these moats around to kind of have a sustainable model. The fourth would be more of an iterative mindset and internalizing that philosophy within the team, having the right team, having the maturity to be able to call out that things are not working and taking the right pivots. But all of this while being totally consumer obsessed and building customer backwards. Those are some of the key insights that we've uncovered.
Parul, how are you looking at the integration now of AI into, you know, analytics across the value chain? Because it is going to be one of the key factors as well that will help companies, you know, go to that next level. Are you seeing that really already play out?
Actually, if you look at the way the scale up of startups has happened in India, right? And, you know, Sid talked about the 0 to 10 phase, but we truly believe that in really scaling up and going from 10 to 100, deploying AI and analytics across the entire value chain is an important parameter in driving both effectiveness as well as efficiency in the organization. So whether it is in terms of, you know, transforming just core business processes, by making sure that there is greater, insight being driven market in, and then also being pushed back to the people on the ground, whether it is on the back end in terms of just driving the entire end-to-end supply chain, from sourcing to shelf, as well as actually running internal operations. So measuring performance, looking at different dashboards, analytics, optimizing all the support functions in terms of HR, finance, admin, etc. And then also using this to actually really create an aha for the end consumer. As we've been discussing, right? It's all about the customer. You have to be customer obsessed. So really using the power of data, AI, and analytics to take customer lifetime value to the next level and target the customer with truly personalized offerings, cross-selling, upselling, upgrading. I think that's the name of the game for many consumer tech companies as they think about AI and analytics.
Siddharth, we're also seeing this digital influence. As per the report, it's grown 6 to 8 times in digitally influenced retail spending. So how critical is it that companies adopt an omni-channel approach in light of this, or should the focus be more towards online presence?
I think over time, you have to really understand your customer base and where they are. There is a portion of consumers that stop online, and that's a continuous journey where consumers increasingly move from offline to online. But if a large share of your customers still sits offline, you have to target them there. And in the long run, I believe it's not just one channel. Really, you have to go omni-channel so that if your customer is offline, you target them there. The critical point to note here is that you have to have an omni-channel strategy. Over times, the lines between online and offline are blurring. There are digital experiences or virtual reality, augmented reality, and the like that you can offer in the offline world and use that as an acquisition channel. And then again, you also have customers who started online and want the touch and feel and the convenience of shopping offline. So I think there is somewhere where both of these have a good marriage. The new enablers that we spoke about, whether it's video commerce, live commerce, those are steps in that direction to make the consumer get the large assortment that they see online and the convenience of shopping offline.
And what's the outlook, Parul, in terms of where a lot of the founders are expecting the next wave of demand or growth to really come from? I understand that it's tier 2+ cities that is likely to be the key growth driver.
That's actually one of the more important ones. You've actually captured it fairly well. I think if we look at where growth is coming from, it is coming from the tier 2+ cities, or what we call Bharat. And that's where, we're moving from India to Bharat. I think in addition to that, what, a lot of consumer tech companies have seen, especially in the last 18 months, is that the acceleration due to the pandemic not only brought new shoppers online, but also actually expanded share of wallet with the existing shoppers. And therefore, really focusing on maximizing value from the existing customers, whether it is through adding new categories, new products, new services, and therefore cross-selling using a lot of the data that they are collecting. That's the second important vector of growth for many of these consumer tech companies. The third, honestly, and we are seeing this actually play out now, is looking at channel interplay, as we've been discussing omni-channel, and therefore wherever the customer is, if you're an online brand, we are seeing many brands actually go offline, and also of course vice versa. And then the fourth is, many of these companies are also choosing to now look international. There are several markets which have similar landscape as India. And therefore a lot of the learnings from India can actually now be exported. So India is becoming almost an export hub now for even some of these innovative business models for many similar countries, whether it is in Southeast Asia or Middle East and so on and so forth.
And there's also a sense that we're seeing, Siddharth, in terms of clear preference now towards healthier life choices, sustainability, re-commerce. So is that something that companies really need to put the spotlight on in order to accelerate further?
I think definitely the entire consciousness around sustainability, healthier choices is prevalent across the country. It's a global phenomena. We have to take the climate seriously. To that extent, I think we've already made a few investments in our portfolio. If you see the Whole Truth, they focus on healthier bars. There's Open Secret, which again is in the healthy snacking space, and a bunch of other companies that continue to come along. On the whole, I think if the consumers are more aware of these, more business models would emerge. Where I can see brands that are getting created towards reusing plastics to build sneakers and other products. And I believe that wave is going to continue across lifestyle and food to start with, and other business models that will emerge over time.
And Parul, finally, are you also now seeing startups within this space, listed or non-listed, reaching profitability sooner? And what are the factors that are driving this?
That's a great question and a very pertinent one. In fact, a lot of the discussions that we're now having are around driving profitable growth. And therefore, looking at levers to drive profitability across the entire value chain. And that's becoming a very important discussion that many founders, CXOs, investors are actually now having with us. And this honestly starts from the top, right? It starts from actually customer acquisition cost, which is where we've seen a lot of investments being made to actually bring customers online and to actually get them to start transacting online, whether it's product or services. And there is a lot of action now happening on actually optimizing profitability across all cost elements, starting with customer acquisition costs.
All right, Parul, Siddharth, it's been a pleasure interacting with you and getting some key insights on the consumer tech space in India, how we're growing and what some of the key parameters are down the line. Good to have you on Startup Central.
Thank you.